In episode 18 of the Surviving Alzheimer's podcast, I'll tell you how after moving my wife to a memory care center, that it became our second home, and we adopted a second family, and how what a great blessing that has been for both of us. Welcome to the Surviving Alzheimer's podcast. I'm your host, Ken Cardita. In this podcast, I share with you my experiences and learnings from the last 13 years as I've walked by the side of my dear wife, Shanna, as she progresses through Alzheimer's disease. It is my desire that you'll find joy and peace while learning to live with your loved one's disease, and not let the disease define you or your loved one. The Surviving Alzheimer's podcast is brought to you by Ascending Minds, LLC. When I decided to move Shanna to a memory care facility, I was very involved with all the planning and arrangements to make that move happen as smooth as possible. It was filled with anxiety and a lot of worry. And at that time, I never would have realized that the memory care facility could truly become a second home for myself and Shanna. And even more of a surprise was that we would gain a second family. And I'll talk about that and how that evolved over this last year and a half. I'll try my best to try and tell Shanna's side of the story. As you may know, she doesn't speak very much and hasn't for the last couple of years. But I've been very observant of her reactions and how she's been able to adapt and adjust in all of this. So I'll do my best to tell her side of the story. I'll also tell my side and how the current memory care facility she's at has now become my second home, and that I now have a new set of neighbors that have become friends, and some are starting to feel like family. I'll also talk about my perspective and share what I've learned over the last year and a half at both of the facilities Shanna has lived at, regarding my feelings and experiences of gaining these new friends and family, and how I have come to terms with memory care becoming a second home for me as well. I'd like to share a listener comment. This is a great example of someone who has shared this podcast with someone who needed to hear it. This comment comes from Jody Shafaulis, who happens to be a friend of Kathy, who I went to high school with back in New York. She left this comment in a post I left on Facebook where I talked about how Shanna was able to say I love you to me, and it was a tender moment. This is what she wrote. Ken, I want to thank you for your podcast. It led me to this site. She's talking about the Careblazer group page on Facebook. She wrote, you are a wonderful husband, and I sometimes feel so cheated that my husband was diagnosed shortly after leaving New York City in retirement. I can identify with you, Jody. I had not imagined my retirement to be anything like this. But I'm hoping that you and others who listen to the podcast can at least feel a sense of hope and joy that could be had once you decide to survive Alzheimer's. All right, so let's talk about what it was like moving into memory care the first time, and then I'll talk about the second time. I've gone over this in previous podcasts, but I want to use this to try and create some context. When we moved Shanna the first time, it was tough. There was an adjustment phase for both of us. It was such a roller coaster ride with many ups and downs concerning her care and her behavior. Shanna adjusted as best as she could, but there was constant change going on. There was so much turnover in the staff. But after about 6 months, I started to feel a sense of comfort, but that eventually got erased a few months later when they tried to kick Shanna out. And really, if I'm honest, that memory care facility never felt like a second home to me. It was just a place I went to go see my wife. That would change after I moved here. Now, we did develop what I would consider many good friends and started to see the beginnings of the feelings of having a second family. I got very familiar and friendly with two of the wives whose husbands were residents there. We often talked when we visited together and have somewhat stayed in touch over the years since we've all left that facility. One of the things that I also realized was just how much Shanna had an effect on people in that first facility that last week we were there. When we started telling people we were leaving and moving to another facility, we did see the influence that we both had on the people there. I really saw this in talking to a lot of the people who we got to know that lived in the assisted living side of the facility, as they could tell us just how much they enjoyed getting to know us, and we could return the same sentiment. With the other memory care residents, of course, it was harder for them to articulate how they felt as we were leaving. I do remember saying goodbye to a couple of them and tears welling up in my eyes, knowing that I'd probably not see them ever again. And I did get somewhat attached to a few of them. Now, moving to the current place, totally different experience. Shanna was hopeful and excited. I had told her that we were moving her there, and I took her there a few times. She still was a bit confused when we actually did the move, but that only lasted about a week or so. For myself, I was cautiously optimistic, but I still did have some anxiety about moving her. Now, as far as the adjustment phase, for Shanna, I think this took about, I guess, a month or so. And she then started to feel like it was home for her. There were no more things that made her feel unsafe or afraid. She really settled in after that first month. And after about 4 months or so, she was totally adjusted and doing quite well. Now, over the next 3 or 4 months, I would call that the best it's ever been for both of us. We both had really settled in to our routine and to my visits. Now, there were some rough days for Shanna. Even recently, she had a UTI, and she has continued to decline in her ability to do things and understand what's going on around her. So I can see things are getting harder for her, but she still has many days where she's happy. And she seems always to be happy when I'm with her, which is awesome. For me, it took quite a bit of adjustment. The drive takes about half an hour. And after the first month or so, I was feeling the impact of that. But after 3 or 4 months, it hasn't even been noticeable. And I've learned to make good use of my time in the car, going there and coming home, often listening to podcasts that help keep me in good spirits. For Shanna, she very quickly felt like her new home was home. For me, I think it took about 4 or 5 months. And then I started to feel like and think like that this was our home together, that my time spent with her, I was at home with her. I even started to referring to it as home as I talked to her. And that had been something I had not done for over a year. In fact, I had not even used the word home for the first year or so because I did not want to trigger her or get her upset. But for the last few months, as I take her on adventures and we drive and pull back up, I say, "We're home. There's your home." Or even if we just go for a walk, I say, "We're home." And she smiles. And that, for me, was a big relief. I think it led to, I know it led to me being able to finally get rid of any of the remaining guilt associated with moving her to memory care. That was something that has taken me quite a while to get over. But I can finally say I am over that. I have not felt guilty about making the move for at least 4 or 5 months. And that has helped. I've gotten to know just about every resident there at the new facility. I know all their names, and I've gotten to know a little bit about almost all of them. And I have some fun interactions with them. I've also gotten to know some of the family members who visit and happen to be there when I'm visiting. We've gotten to know each other. We tell a little bit about our loved ones to each other. And this feels like an informal support group at times where we can talk and make comments about what we've observed around the facility and the care of our loved ones. And it's all positive, and it's great. It's very reassuring. Also, as a result of weekly interaction, I've gotten to know all the caregivers. I know them all by name. I know a little bit about their personal lives. And I've taken the opportunity to tell them a lot about Shanna so they can have a perspective of Shanna and who she was before the disease took hold of her. It's been quite interesting to see quite a few of them get very attached to Shanna. And I've seen a few of them tell her how much they love her. And that just warms my heart. I've also gotten to know the owners and the manager very well. I have regular contact with them, at least on a weekly basis. And we talk, and I tell them how much I appreciate the environment that they've created and the care that my wife gets. In fact, we had the Christmas party this last Saturday, and the owners and I got together and performed some music for the residents and the families. I played some guitar, and one of the owners sang and played piano while the other one played some drums. And we had a blast just playing for the residents and their families, and they sang along to some Christmas songs. And it's always a special treat when I get to play guitar for Shanna. I know she won't get to see my band play anymore, so every time I get a chance to play for her, it's a special moment for me. Now, in writing this podcast episode, I have realized just how blessed Shanna and I have been since relocating her 9 months ago. The time seems to have flown by, and I truly have developed many attachments to my second family. And I truly enjoy visiting them almost as much as visiting Shanna at times. Each of my visits, I take time to try and say hello, ask how their day's going, and kid around with them if I feel pretty comfortable with them. Now, as I've gone through all of this, I've realized and learned something that I'd like to share with you. The truth is, things will never be the same when it comes to Alzheimer's. It is true that when we deal with our loved one and their Alzheimer's, things will always be changing. We may hit some plateaus for a moment, but often we're exposed to many changes that can happen, it seems like, almost on a daily basis, at times on an hourly basis. In reality, if we think about it, our lives are always changing. Granted, it can be much more dramatic and intense when we have a family member who has dementia, and especially if we're acting as their caregiver. This can also be true for both caring at home or having our loved one in a memory care facility. The truth is, even in a memory care facility, things keep changing. Now, the untruth or the lie that I have learned in all of this is that when I have said to myself, I am destined for loneliness and will be forever broken, that was something that I thought and I felt a few years ago. As I've examined this feeling, and I've learned that this is not true, that I can have new friends with my wife and enjoy socialization. It's different, but it's not forever isolated. We can break through that feeling of isolation. Also, my heart has been healed over these last year and a half, and it continues to heal. So it is an untruth that I bought into a few years back, that I was destined for loneliness and forever broken. I thought about this and I said, where did this come from? As caregivers, we can feel very isolated at times. Our life, as well as our loved one, is turned upside down. We're making lots of changes and adjustments. Add to that the fact that if you were a caregiver during the recent pandemic, that really made it much more intense. Oftentimes, family and friends will start to distance themselves away from us as they feel awkward and don't know how to help. And for family members, they have to deal with the loss of their mother or their sibling. And it's difficult for them. Sometimes they stay away a little bit more than we'd like because that's how they have to deal with what's going on with their loved one. Now, after years of being a caregiver, all of this can add up and take its toll. Sometimes it comes on all at once. Other times it may take you a few years to develop these feelings. But both can leave us and our loved one feeling isolated. This, to me, really brings out our need for human connection. Everyone needs to feel connected to someone, to feel loved. Now, for me in my situation, we're talking about my wife, my best friend, person who I've loved the most in this entire world. And that need to still feel connected to her is very great. It is something I work on and pray for every visit. It is something that I thought at one time when we were still at home together that was gone. I thought it was gone forever. But through the grace of God, it has returned. And now I nurture it, and I don't take it for granted. I don't know what it's like to have a parent have this disease and how that affects you. But I do know if it's someone you love, the more we love, the more it hurts at times. Now, from our loved one's perspective, I saw Shanna become very isolated at home. And this manifested itself in her sleeping for 16 hours a day at times. Her desire to do things that we used to do together waned. It even triggered hallucinations at times. And some of her most difficult behaviors were triggered by this sense of boredom. It created a high level of frustration. Now, this for me made caregiving a bit more challenging. It drove my stress levels quite high, and it led to me being burned out. And that lack of connection with her and being isolated was very soul-crushing at the time. Moving Shanna to a memory care facility simplified things. Her environment became a new environment, and there were some adjustments, but she felt a sense of fitting in. And I think one of the major things was when she was living at home, she was living in our world, the old world that she used to live in. But now she finds herself in a place where there are many other people who struggle with all of the same things as she does. And she feels comfortable around these people. Now, I will have to admit for myself, that took some getting used to. I remember going and visiting that first memory care facility. If I am being honest here, those first couple of visits, that first week or two, it was rough. Just seeing everyone else struggling at various stages of the disease and various flavors of the disease kind of scared me. But as I got to know each of these people, and as I got to feel more comfortable in their presence, I was able to see past the disease and see them as real people and learn to love them and get to know them. This, for both of us, increased our opportunity for reconnecting not only to each other, but reconnecting to other people as well. I quickly noticed that Shanna felt much more comfortable in her own world. I notice this now when I take her out. I'll take her to a park or a store and we'll get some gelato or ice cream. And when she's around these people in these situations, I can sense a little feeling of uncomfortableness. She makes some faces and things at people, and I am aware of that. But when we go back to her home, she feels much more calm. I can see her body language change from being a little uncomfortable to being very comfortable again. I've also noticed that I've observed how she interacts with the other residents and with the caregivers. She feels very comfortable with them. She'll often touch their arm or pat their back when they are trying their best to communicate. She'll give hugs to the caregivers, and she'll even give hugs to some of the other residents. So I see her feeling very at ease. And again, for me, this transition of going from our one-on-one world that was very private to now living in a very open setting, at first I felt pretty uncomfortable. There was so much to take in. One of the other things that has been interesting is that Shanna has always been the youngest person in the memory care facilities. By a few years with a few people, but by decades with most of the population. In fact, a fair amount of the people in her current memory care facility, as well as her other one, are our parents' age. Now, Shanna and my parents are deceased, but when I find out these people are in their late 80s, early 90s, that's how old our parents would be. It's funny how some of the residents call us the young, cute couple. It's funny to be in our early 60s and mid 60s and be considered a cute young couple. Now, I needed to let my guard down as I started visiting the memory care facilities and open myself up to new things. At the first facility, I was super laser focused and I was all about Shanna's care. And it was very hard for me to let go. And in fact, I got a little too involved. Now, the turning point happened there when I got to know a few of the other spouses. And we had a lot of things in common that we could relate to. And this started opening things up for me. And I was able to feel more comfortable. And after a couple months, I was able to get to know the staff and the residents and the other family members. Now, this led to a learning that this new arrangement was a different way of living. It became a second home and a new family. And the evolution of this new family started this way. In the first week or month or so, there would be casual hellos and smiles. And then there would be the getting to know you time where we would spend time as a group. Oftentimes, another family member and their loved one and myself and Shanna. Here's where we learned quite a bit about each other's life stories. This led to interacting more and more with the residents as well. I've also had some one-on-one discussions with just the other family members, and that's where we can share some candid observations and things. And some of the benefits of getting to know the residents and getting to know the other family members are these. I no longer feel alone in this journey. We've learned a lot from each other. And I'm able to talk to somebody who really understands what it's like to be a caregiver. It is somewhat a fraternity, if you would, or a support group. My visits are no longer monotonous, trying to figure out how to fill in time and do things with Shanna. As we socialize, this takes up a good part of the visits, and I've noticed Shanna comes alive. I'll be sitting with her on the couch trying to reach her and communicate with her. And maybe I'll get a nod or a smile. But then when a family member and a loved one come by and sit with us, she just perks right up and starts repeating words that are being said and nods her head and gets totally engaged. It's amazing to see this. And we try and involve our loved ones and read their expressions. The other benefit is the other family's members watch out for Shanna when I'm not there and vice versa. We keep an eye on things and sit with them and talk to them. One of the things that's really awesome is some of the other ladies who visit their mom will take Shanna for a walk. And also, I found out recently that the caregivers are taking Shanna outside for a walk because she loves to be outside, and that's awesome. As I've gotten to know the staff, it's become very valuable. I get the most accurate information from the caregivers and not the management. And this is true in both facilities, especially in the larger facility that was more like a corporate environment. I only got accurate information from the care staff. Now, in the smaller facility, the owners have much more of a sense of how Shanna's doing, and the manager is on top of everything. But again, the ladies who take care of Shanna will tell me stuff, tell me how her morning went, tell me how she's reacting, how she's eating. And I don't have to ask and feel like I'm prying information. They will offer this information to me. And they don't sugarcoat it, and it's good. And I really know exactly how she's doing when I'm not there. I've been able to share things to help them know Shanna and endear them to her. And it's been pretty awesome to see them get attached to Shanna. How can I not be grateful for these caregivers who have come to love my wife? Now, if you have assisted living as part of your facility, here's a couple of tips that I learned from our first experience. Get to know the assisted living population. Eat meals with them in the main dining room if that's allowable. That was a way of socializing that really helped Shanna and myself adjust to memory care. Oftentimes in the memory care dining room, it's kind of quiet, especially if you're at a table where no one really can carry on a conversation. In the assisted living, everyone more or less can have a conversation, and they made Shanna feel very much at home. We used to cruise around the facility as well, poke our heads into the different activity rooms and talk to people and get to know them. I found that many people in assisted living also crave connection as well. And so as you visit your loved one, you can also visit them and bring a smile to their face. Now, are there any downsides to this? Well, there's a high probability that you're going to get attached to some of these second family members. And when either you or they leave, you will feel a sense of loss and sadness. A good example of this is at the first facility, my wife's first neighbor, her name was Rosie, was someone who became a friend of Shanna's, and they would hang out together. She left the facility only after a few months, and we could both feel a bit of a loss. We missed her, as well as all the other people that we've left. When we said goodbye when we moved, I really did not prepare myself for how emotional that would be. Also, seeing some of the better caregivers move on because of whatever reason was very discouraging, but it's all part of the experience. Probably the best thing, though, is that I have learned to have fun with my second family. As I've gotten to know them, you can have a lot of fun. I kid with them a lot. It seems that bingo is a very popular activity at all these places. When we played bingo at the first facility, I would try and crack jokes, but some of the residents would give me a dirty look. They took their bingo pretty darn seriously. At the current facility, it's not so much. And I can joke around and I can do goofy things like if we're waiting for a specific number, I'll lick one of the bingo chips and attach it to my forehead and tell everyone I'm thinking of my magic number. And that'll usually get a laugh out of somebody. And if someone wins too much, I'll kind of walk over to their table and say, hey, could you blow on my bingo card and give me some good luck? Because we don't have any at our table. And we just kind of kid around. And there are a segment of the population there that can have full conversations. And I always take a chance to talk to them and let them know how I'm doing and ask them how they're doing. And for those who can't really speak, just getting in their line of sight and saying hello, smiling at them, asking a very simple question. It's amazing to see the power of a smile, and just being there with them really helps them. Well, I know I've kind of jumped back and forth on this episode, but I hope there were some things here that were helpful to you. As this year comes to a close, as I often do every year, I get introspective. And this year, as I've thought about all the things that have gone on, and doing this podcast for the last 5 months has really allowed me to see things from a new perspective, to see it from a bigger picture. I've been able to relive and review some of the difficult times over the last few years, but view them in a new way, which has led me to feel a great sense of gratitude, especially for this last year, and just how much I have come to realize and see God's hand in guiding me through some of these most difficult decisions. And coming to realize that I was never alone in all of this. And this has given me a sense of hope for what lies ahead for both Shanna and I as we continue our journey down Dementia Road. As always, I would like to invite you to do something. I would like to invite you that in the coming days, to stop for a moment and see if you can find things to feel grateful for. Any help that you may have received this year, or for being able to do something with your loved one that they still can do that brings you both joy. It is so easy for us to get stuck in the day-to-day activities of being a caregiver and allowing the weight of that experience with our loved ones to keep us down and often discouraged. If needed, inject some humor into your thinking as you deal with all of the absurd things that we go through as we care for our loved ones. Have a great day and take care of yourself. Thanks for watching an episode of the Surviving Alzheimer's podcast. If you're new to this podcast, I recommend that you watch the first 13 episodes in order. That way you can learn about our backstory. This will make understanding later episodes much easier. To help you with this, I've created a playlist. It's called Surviving Alzheimer's Podcast in Order. That way you can listen to all the episodes in the order that they were created. The mission of the Surviving Alzheimer's Podcast is to educate and inspire caregivers, family, and friends who are on their own unique journey down Dementia Road with their loved one. I would really appreciate it if you could share this episode to anyone who you feel would benefit from it. Additional ways for you to help us reach others are to hit the like button for this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to be notified of new episodes. All of these actions will encourage the YouTube algorithm to share this episode and podcast to other potential viewers.